Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. I'm making this video on the same day as the game, but I've had enough time to clear my head, to calm myself down, to compact and compartmentalize my thoughts, and to compose myself and cool my head and feed the ducks and take a walk. And I have decided with composure and with perspective that he needs to be sacked. And to be honest, I was already trying to put it politely with manners. Please resign, I said after Southampton, which means Potter out in my own special way. But I don't like saying Potter out. I still don't like saying it. I don't like saying any manager out. I don't get any pleasure from screaming from the top of my lungs that this man needs to be relieved of his job, because that is meaning that my football club is suffering. That is meaning that we failed. That is meaning that we made the wrong decision. And we have. And it's time to understand that, own up to it, and not be proud about it, but at least be kind of humble about it. And this can't continue. We're 11th. He has a 42% win ratio. He's beaten one team in the top 10. He has 9 points from a possible 24 in the last, amount of games where you can accumulate said points against teams that you really should be getting more points against. And I don't need to go through Fulham and West Ham and Southampton and Leeds and Everton and Leicester and Villa, but I just did. And I've had enough. I've genuinely had enough. And there's a couple of things that changed my mind. Pre-season, people talk about getting to the end of the season, writing off the season potentially because we have nothing to play for. I disagree. I want Europa League football. I'm not dropping my standards any lower than top 6. I think top 6 is attainable. I don't think top 4 is attainable, but I think is attainable. I do. I really do. And I actually want Europa League football because I do want Andre Santos, Carney Chukwuemeka, Ian Maatsen if he stays, Levi Colwill. Like I said in my review, I want these players to get that game time. I want to have another shot at the Champions League qualification via another route. I want another shot at a trophy via another competition. I want that. I want those extra games. And it's a competition that at least commands some base level line of respect. I think we're not going to get that with this guy. We're not. And that's why I'm ready to now part ways right now, because I want that. I do. He has shown not enough in terms of an improvement in game management, tactical decision making in game, and obviously starting 11 wise, and of course going up against quality coaches, he's getting found out. And it's not just about yesterday, but it's about the fact that waiting for that pre-season now makes no sense. Now, of course, I would prefer to hire a manager under the circumstances of a pre-season, because let's be honest, it would allow them to at least not have to play competitive games. But you actually only get really 1 month of pre-season and you're straight back into things. And we're going to have a squad of about 50, probably 55, because everybody's going to come flooding back from loans. The squad now is actually smaller than what it will be then. And we have to be very quick and consistent with who we want to sell. And don't flip and flop, and don't get confused, and don't mess around and dilly-dally. And I don't trust Potter to be decisive enough. We've seen already since that January transfer window, there's only been 2 times that we've had a consistent front line in those games since the January transfer window closed. And that was between the games of Leeds and Dortmund. And I sympathise with Felix being suspended and of course Sterling being out. But we've seen Aubameyang come off the bench against Tottenham, a player that is now wearing a Barcelona shirt at El Clasico. Not in the plans, in the plans. Ziyech, in the plans, not in the plans. Pulisic, in the plans, not in the plans. And then obviously Madueke and Mudryk get phased in and out. And it's just awfully confusing. It must be confusing for the players. It's certainly confusing for me. It seems to be confusing for Potter. He hasn't been definitive. He hasn't been cutthroat. How can I trust him to be cutthroat and definitive in the summer with more players coming back if he can't be cutthroat and definitive now? We're not playing any sort of consistent pattern of play or style even after that international break. And we're not improving gradually because it's very up and down. It's very wishy-washy. 1 minute you're getting a performance that you saw against Everton, then you're getting something completely different against Aston Villa. And more importantly as well, this manager isn't showing in his words that he means business. And I don't like to microanalyze usually, but when I'm looking post-match after a game now, I'm looking for some sort of accountability. I'm looking for some sort of reasoning, some sort of logic. And he's not providing it. He's talking about XG and positive metrics outside of the most important, which is the goal scored. He's talking about the McGinn shot was a low XG shot. For Kepa, obviously, we know he sits second for goals conceded from range behind Raya for Brentford, which massively put me off when I saw that statistic. Around about 22% for Kepa, 23% for Raya, and 13% Premier League average if you're conceding from long range. So maybe it's a bit of a height thing. But you don't seem to be taking enough accountability for your own decision making in game and in that 11. You know, playing two fullbacks in the back three to limit yourself from changing to a back four, having a 3-2 build up when only Watkins is up top, and it's not a two-man striker system, which is what I expected with Leon Bailey in the starting 11. So you couldn't adapt to the fact that it was just Watkins and go with a four and commit a little bit more. And then forget about committing even a bit more, because then you've got Reece James behind Loftus-Cheek, when Reece James absolutely shits on Loftus-Cheek in wide areas with goal threat and, you know, chance creation. And you saw the comparison and the contrast between what he was providing, Loftus-Cheek, and what Chilwell was providing on the left-hand side. And then you move Chilwell to left side centre-back in a three, one of your biggest and best goal, you know, threat in that game. And you bring him back and restrict him, and you throw somebody else in that position instead of keeping that the same and trying to maybe even improve it and fixing the other side. And you take so long to make those changes, and it ends up costing you, just like it did against Tottenham, when you're about to make said substitutions and then the second goal goes in and kills the game. And there's crosses coming into the box, a little bit of, you know, passing to kind of maneuver the ball to get to a chance creation situation, and then the ball comes into the box and there's nobody to head it in. There's no aerial presence. It just feels like wishing on a prayer at times. It feels like there's no real contingency plan for the situations that we find ourselves in. And I'm wondering why we even don't start playing until we go a goal down, or why is we not playing well consistently throughout the 90? Or why are we able to be opened up so easily with two long balls over the top? Why are we not compact enough? Why? Just so many questions. So many questions. Why are we bringing on Kante over attacking midfielders when we need a goal? Kante actually had a really positive performance, but I don't want to see Kante having one of your high XG chances and dragging the shot. If Kante's taking that shot, it's a lower XG chance in my book. Not statistically, but in my book. If Harry Kane's on the end of it at Tottenham, you know, it's a high XG chance. If Kante's there, it's a low XG chance. So it depends on who is shooting in said situations that you as a manager are trying to formulate and create. And if it's the wrong players in the wrong positions, and I've gone through quite a lot of players that were in areas I didn't want to see them in. Kai Havertz pulling off to the right, dragging back for Mudryk or Felix in the box when it should really be the other way around. Saw that many a time. Kante drifting off to right wing when he came on in the box having shots. I don't want to see these players in these areas. We might be creating for them, but they're not the guys we should be creating for. Obviously, Mudryk has to take responsibility. You know, there's other chances that were missed. It's not all on him, but it feels like I've said that time and time again. It feels like that's happened it's happened too often. And when he speaks, he doesn't seem to demand the best. He doesn't seem to demand vast improvement. He doesn't seem to demand change. He seems to be accepting. It seems to be the norm to him, because this is the position that he was birthed in at Brighton, right? In mid-table. And you're asking him to now step up and speak with that conviction, and he doesn't want to do it. That's what's giving me Ole Gunnar Solskjaer vibes. It's not the tactics, because he's making blunders, but I still believe he's not inept. I still believe he's tactically astute, or at least tactically competent. But, because he would not have got to this point if he wasn't. He didn't get handed this, you know, career on a silver platter. He wasn't a legend of the game. He had to work his way up. But I'm wondering why I'm getting those vibes of Ollie, and it's purely because of the atmosphere, the vibe. But that's changed now. That atmosphere and vibe is starting to turn. We're seeing reports last night that players are at an all-time low in terms of confidence. There's briefings that Nagelsmann is on the shortlist. There's briefings about compensation having to be paid to Bayern Munich because they still have Nagelsmann under contract until he gets a new job. 2 contracts paying out with Thomas Tuchel. We're not getting the same sound bites of backing and defending, and now we're getting your job is on the line. Fabrizio is saying you're under serious pressure, but the board have to take massive responsibility for this, because you did sack an elite level manager and hired Graham Potter 24 hours later, and now you have to eat humble pie. And it's not to say that Thomas Tuchel was perfect, although he did just go and pick up his first win for Bayern Munich. His recruitment, his decision making with Gallagher in midfield and Aubameyang, even though he only used him once, and maybe he isn't the easiest to deal with behind the scenes in a collaborative fashion, but you could have had a bit more patience potentially and saw that out until you got Christopher Vavell. It is hindsight analysis, but you do ideally want your director of football or sporting director in before you hire a manager, because they're the ones that are meant to hire said manager. And now Christopher Vavell is not backing Graham Potter, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. He didn't hire him, and he's probably very fond of hiring and is pushing towards Nagelsmann because he's worked with him previously. So now you've got a situation where, again, you've signed a lot of players in the January transfer window, and you have to hope and pray that these guys were not just signed for Graham Potter, and they were signed for not only an attacking manager and a progressive manager, which these two are, but also a manager in Nagelsmann who will actually use these new players that you've brought in. Because God forbid he says that if he is hired, and I'm not even fully backing this Nagelsmann appointment, because yes, it's better than what we have because we don't want to continue in this mess, and anything is better than what we're currently going through. But he's had his own things that he needs to improve on. The project manager term is kind of thrown around because he's young, but is he able to actually, kind of build in that manner over a long-term period? Or is he he wants wins, which he does. And if he doesn't get them, is it going to become a little bit problematic, falling out with players? We saw it at Bayern Munich potentially, falling out with the board. We saw it potentially. So it's not as rosy as it sounds, but he's a better coach, you'd hope, right? After what he's done in his previous jobs, but you just never know. You just never know what's going to happen. It's not a manager that's gone and won a whole host of trophies and has vast experience with elite level football clubs, just Bayern Munich on his roster. So it's an interesting one, but they have to take humble pie here, because in the end they have to sack him. In the end, it's an expensive payout if there's no termination clause, which I hope there is. And in the end, Graham Potter, he doesn't come out of this looking great for another top level job. He probably falls back down to where he once came. And he really has no one to blame but himself in the end, because you do have to pick up some results. And like I said, the situation is not perfect for you, but you cannot draw against Everton. You cannot lose to Southampton, who lose to Grimsby. You cannot lose against Aston Villa at home. You cannot have us in a relegation battle by your own performance as a manager, and the only reason why you're 11th and this high up the table is because of what Tuchel did before September. You cannot be on a 42% win ratio. It's just insane. And with the fixtures coming up, and with what I would like us to achieve, it's not going to match up. He's not going to go to Manchester United and win. He's not going to go to Manchester City with what he's been on and win. He's not going to play against Arsenal there and win. Liverpool, even on Tuesday, I don't expect to win. I can't buy a win. I can't expect a win from a manager that's won one in the top 10, none in the top 6 when he's come up against them in this league. Can't expect that fixture list that he's got coming up with Brentford and Newcastle as well, Brighton. Can't expect. No way can you expect that he's gonna get the results he needs to get. So we're wasting our time. Fundamentally, we're wasting our time. May as well make a change and start to prep and obviously improve, but also prep for the following season. We're wasting our time. So I hope he is sacked soon. I hope that we don't have to rip up our entire infrastructure, because obviously we've hired people from Brighton who have come along with him. His coaching staff are all on contracts as well. Paul Winstanley came and a few others as well. Obviously, Paul Macaulay as well, head of recruitment. I really hope that they have exit clauses. I hope that they have termination clauses. I hope that this is not going to be a massive shell out price point wise, and I hope it doesn't impact us financially going forward, but I'm sure it will have some sort of implication. But there's big lessons to be learned, and this ownership is in its early days. I've been very almost sympathetic and understanding of the situation, that they're not going to get everything perfect, and they are going to make mistakes in their opening month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, year in this sport, at this club. And they're learning along the way. But this is a harsh lesson that you have to learn, harsh reality. And that reality is that sometimes maybe making too many changes too soon can bite you in the backside. But also, when you have an elite level manager, even if you don't see eye to eye, and even if they don't fit completely in what you're trying to do, just take your time a little bit sometimes and make decisions a little bit more calmly, because and don't give people that haven't performed at this level, massive contracts, and just stupid level of backing to the point where there's no pressure on them until now, until Leeds, until Dortmund, you know. And the way he speaks is almost the way that they cradled him and cuddled him and gave him that security and safety. And it's no surprise to see that security and safety kind of on the pitch. There doesn't seem to be that pressure. There doesn't seem to be that pressure to perform. And then the only time we heard him talk in a way that mirrored how we felt as fans is when he was about to be sacked, and which was Dortmund and Leeds. And that felt like a bit of PR, and it felt like a little bit of, yo, Potter, wakey. You need to swear. You need to tell them that we're going to win the fucking Champions League. It felt very PR. It felt very rehearsed or planned. It didn't feel very authentic, if I'm being completely honest. It didn't feel very natural. And regardless of whether it was or not, it has not proved to be in the pudding with the results over the last 2 Premier League games. So time for him to get the hell out, respectfully. And yeah, we need to move on because I'm not doing this anymore. I can't be doing this anymore. I need the rest of the season to be in stark contrast to what I've seen so far under this manager, because it has been relegation form. And there's nowhere to go from here. There really isn't, apart from a relegation battle. I need 40 points. So let's see what happens. Big up your damn selves. Let's see if they make that change. There's reports dropping every other day, I'm sure now, up until the Liverpool game. So we're going to see. But until then, big up your damn selves. In a bit, people. Peace. Make sure you subscribe and like.